Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you began to lose yourself in the process? You wanted to be seen, to be valued, to be enough, but every time you tried, it felt like you were disappearing a little more. That's what it feels like to be married to a narcissist. It's not just a relationship, it's a slow erosion of your identity. You start by wanting peace, but somewhere along the way, you begin to question your own worth. You start wondering if love should really hurt this much. You see, when you love someone who only loves themselves, the rules of the game change. They don't seek connection, they seek control. They don't want a partner, they want an audience. Every compliment you give becomes fuel. Every time you apologize just to keep the peace, it teaches them they can win by breaking you a little more. And you, being kind, being patient, being loving, believe that one day they'll finally see your heart. But they don't, because they're not looking for your heart. They're looking for your reflection of them. This is the hidden truth about marriage to a narcissist. You're not seen, you're used. You're not loved for who you are, but for how well you serve their illusion. You think if you love them enough, they'll finally heal. You think if you stay calm, they'll finally listen. But you can't fix someone who gains power by keeping you small. You can't save someone who doesn't want to change. And that realization, it's painful. But it's also the first spark of freedom, because here's the thing. They don't choose people who are weak. They choose people who are strong enough to carry the whole relationship. They choose those with empathy, patience, and light, because deep down, they have none of it themselves. You were chosen not because you were broken, but because you were beautiful. Because your heart had something they could never create on their own, and that's what they feed on, your goodness. But the same light they crave is also the one that can free you. If you're still here, still listening, it means something inside you already knows the truth. You're not crazy, you're not too sensitive, you're not the problem. You've simply been giving your love to someone incapable of giving it back. And the moment you understand that, the balance shifts. The moment you stop begging for validation and start reclaiming your peace, their power begins to fade. Because narcissists thrive on your confusion, but they crumble when you choose clarity. Stay until the end, because what comes next is not about them, it's about you. It's about rediscovering the strength they tried to take. It's about remembering that you were never meant to live small, just to make someone else feel big. This isn't the end of your story. It's the awakening before the comeback. By the time this message ends, you'll see the truth they never wanted you to see. That the most dangerous thing you can do to a narcissist is to heal. Because once you heal, they lose their mirror. And once you remember who you are, they can no longer control the reflection. The moment you stop fighting to be understood by someone who never intended to understand you, something powerful begins to shift inside you. At first, it feels like emptiness, like the silence after a storm. You've spent so long defending your truth, explaining your heart, begging for basic respect that when the noise stops, it feels almost unnatural. But that silence is not your loss. It's the space where healing begins. It's the first breath of peace after years of walking on emotional eggshells. And in that quiet, you start to hear something you haven't heard in a long time. Your own voice. For so long, that voice was buried under manipulation. You were told your feelings were too much. You were told your memories were wrong. You were told that you were the problem. Every argument ended with your apology, even when you had done nothing wrong. That's what gaslighting does. It rewires your reality until you begin to doubt your own mind. But here's the truth they never wanted you to know. When someone twists your reality, it's because they fear your clarity. They know that if you ever see the truth clearly, their control is over. Your awareness is the one thing they cannot survive. And that's why awareness is your power. When you finally see that love without empathy is just control disguised as affection, you stop chasing illusions. You stop trying to make sense of chaos that was never meant to make sense. You begin to understand that real love doesn't need you to shrink. Real love doesn't punish you for having boundaries. Real love doesn't make you afraid to speak. It welcomes your voice. It celebrates your strength. And when you start believing that you deserve that kind of love, everything begins to change. You start reclaiming your energy, the same energy you once spent analyzing every message, every mood, every silence. you now use to rebuild yourself. You begin to move differently. You start protecting your peace instead of defending their behavior. You stop walking on eggshells and start walking in purpose. And little by little, the weight you carried begins to lift. That's not weakness, that's rebirth. That's your soul remembering that it was never meant to live in survival mode. The mind of a narcissist thrives on keeping you uncertain. But the moment you find inner certainty, their influence dissolves. They will try to pull you back, through guilt, through promises, through sudden displays of affection. Don't be fooled. Every sweet word that comes after the pain is not love. It's a test. They're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry you finally saw it. And when you see through it, they lose their favorite weapon, your doubt. You owe it to yourself to hold that clarity, no matter how lonely it feels at first, because loneliness in truth is better than togetherness in illusion. You will miss the version of them you created in your mind, not the person they really are. And that's okay. That's part of the healing. Grief is not weakness. It's the closing of a chapter that was never meant to last forever. What comes next is strength, but not the kind that fights to be seen. It's the kind that stands quietly in its own light. Because when you stop begging for love that hurts, you make space for love that heals. And that, right there, is where your power returns. There comes a moment when you realize that healing is not about getting back to who you were before the pain. It's about becoming someone entirely new, someone who understands their worth not because of what others see, but because of what they've survived. You see, the aftermath of a relationship with a narcissist isn't just about heartbreak. It's about rediscovering your power after it's been quietly drained from you for years. They taught you to doubt yourself, to question your intuition, to apologize for existing. But the truth is, your intuition was never wrong. It was silenced. And now, you are learning to listen again. At first, healing feels uncomfortable. You've been conditioned to believe that peace is dangerous, that silence means something is about to go wrong. You might even find yourself missing the chaos because it's what your nervous system has come to recognize as normal. That's what emotional trauma does. It rewires your body to crave the very pain that destroyed it. But awareness breaks that cycle. Every time you choose calm over conflict, truth over confusion, you are teaching your body and mind that peace is safe again. That's how healing happens. Not in sudden moments, but in small, defiant acts of choosing yourself. It takes courage to unlearn survival, to stop scanning every expression, every word for signs of danger, to stop trying to manage someone else's emotions just to feel safe. You've spent so long reading their moods that you forgot how to feel your own. But now, you begin to notice small shifts. The way your shoulders relax when you no longer have to perform. The way your breath deepens when you speak your truth without fear. These are signs of power returning to you, not through control, but through release. And as you heal, something remarkable happens. You start seeing the world differently. The fog begins to clear. You notice beauty again, in silence, in solitude, in the way sunlight hits the floor in the morning. You realize that life was never meant to be lived in constant tension. That love was never supposed to hurt, that respect was never supposed to be negotiated. The more you align with that truth, the more your energy changes. You stop chasing what drains you and start attracting what matches your peace. That's not coincidence. That's energy responding to awareness. The narcissist once made you feel small for caring too much, but that sensitivity they mocked is actually your strength. The fact that you can feel deeply, love deeply, and still rise after being shattered, that's power they will never understand. Empathy is not weakness. Compassion is not a flaw. These are the traits that make you human, in a world where many have forgotten how to feel. And though it may take time, you will come to see that what they tried to destroy in you was never broken. It was only hidden, waiting for you to reclaim it. So let this be your reminder, you are not a victim of what happened to you. You are the survivor who decided that the cycle ends here. Every tear you shed, every sleepless night, every moment you doubted your worth, it was not wasted. It was transformation in progress. And now, you stand at the edge of a new beginning, no longer defined by what you endured, but by what you became. Because when you heal after being used, when you rise after being diminished, you don't just survive, you awaken. And that awakening is unstoppable. When you start to awaken, you realize that freedom doesn't always arrive with a roar. Sometimes it begins as a quiet decision. The moment you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. The moment you stop waiting for closure from someone who benefits from your confusion. Freedom is not granted by apology or approval. It's claimed the instant you decide that your peace matters more than their validation. That choice, simple as it sounds, changes everything. It's the first time in years that your heart begins to beat for you again. For so long, your love was a battlefield. Every day, you woke up trying to prove your worth to someone who never intended to see it. You kept believing that if you loved harder, tried more, forgave faster, things would finally change. But narcissistic love is a one-way mirror. You give endlessly, and all you see in return is your reflection fading. They taught you that love means endurance, but endurance without reciprocity is not love, it's self-abandonment. And when you finally understand that, you stop trying to earn what should have been freely given. The truth is, they were never looking for love, they were looking for control. They needed you to admire them, to revolve around their moods, to feed their ego with your devotion. And you, being kind, loyal, and full of hope, mistook their manipulation for connection. That's not your failure, it's your humanity. Narcissists prey on goodness because they lack it themselves. They mimic love because they've never known it. And the irony is, they need people like you to feel powerful, but people like you don't need them to feel whole. Once you understand that, their power collapses. Healing from this kind of relationship is not about revenge, it's about release. Revenge keeps you tied to the same energy that broke you. Release sets you free. The most powerful response to a narcissist is not anger, it's indifference. When you no longer react, when their words no longer shake you, when their silence no longer scares you, that's when you win. Because their control depends on your emotional energy. Without it, they have nothing left to feed on. And yet, healing doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you learn to care differently. You learn to love without losing yourself. You learn that compassion has limits and boundaries are not cruelty, they are self-respect. You stop apologizing for protecting your energy. You stop feeling guilty for walking away from what wounds you. You stop explaining your worth to those determined not to see it. Because you finally understand that your love is sacred. Not everyone deserves access to it. With time, your heart begins to trust again, not in them, but in you. You realize that your ability to love deeply is not a weakness, it's your superpower. You survived manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional starvation, yet your capacity to feel remains intact. That's not brokenness, that's resilience. And as that realization sinks in, you begin to see that what they tried to destroy in you has only evolved. You've become softer in heart, but stronger in spirit. You've learned that peace is not found in people, it's found in your own alignment. So when you look back now, don't see wasted years, see sacred lessons. You learned what love is by facing what love is not. You discovered strength not by being untouched by pain, but by walking through it and still choosing to love again, this time starting with yourself. That is the truest form of power, to be able to rise from what tried to erase you and still say, I am whole. ChatGPT said, the moment you realize that peace isn't something you find in others, but something you protect within yourself, everything changes. You stop chasing explanations. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop trying to make sense of someone whose only goal was to keep you off balance. You begin to understand that the closure you've been waiting for doesn't come from them, it comes from you. It's the moment you finally whisper to yourself, I deserve better, and truly believe it. That belief becomes your foundation. For the first time in years, you stop defining yourself by the pain someone else caused. You begin to measure your worth not by how much you can tolerate, but by how deeply you can heal. The narcissist taught you many things, but the most important lesson wasn't about them, it was about you. They taught you what happens when you forget your own value. They showed you how dangerous it is to pour endlessly into someone who only takes. And now, through the ashes of what they broke, you are rebuilding something stronger. Self-trust. Self-trust is the antidote to manipulation. It's what allows you to walk away without second-guessing your intuition. It's what silences the noise of guilt that they planted in your mind. When you trust yourself again, no one can rewrite your reality. You no longer need to prove what happened because you know what you felt. You no longer question your sensitivity because you understand that feeling deeply is not weakness, it's awareness. That awareness becomes your armor. It doesn't make you hard, it makes you clear. And in that clarity, you rediscover freedom. Freedom is not the absence of memories, it's the absence of control. The memories may still visit, the wounds may still ache, but they no longer define you. You stop reacting to the ghosts of manipulation because you've learned to anchor yourself in truth. You don't need their validation to feel whole anymore. You don't need their attention to feel seen. You don't need their permission to be happy. Your worth stopped depending on them the moment you decided to stop explaining it. With each step forward, you begin to feel lighter. You start noticing the small victories, the mornings you wake up without anxiety, the moments you laugh without guilt, the nights you fall asleep without replaying the past. That's what real healing looks like. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's choosing peace when chaos feels familiar. It's saying no without justification. It's standing tall in your truth even when no one claps for you. Because this journey isn't about proving your strength to others. It's about remembering it for yourself. And though the scars remain, they no longer represent pain, they represent wisdom. Each one is a reminder that you faced something that could have destroyed you, but it didn't. You bent, but you didn't break. You fell, but you didn't stay down. You were lied to, dismissed, and diminished. And yet here you are, still capable of love, still capable of hope, still capable of light. That is the victory they can never take from you. The truth is, you don't heal by finding someone new to love you. You heal by falling back in love with yourself, the parts you lost, the parts you silenced, the parts you thought were unworthy. Because when you return to yourself fully, when you realize that your peace, your light, your love were never theirs to take, you finally understand what real power feels like. It's quiet, it's steady, and it's yours. There is a sacred moment in healing when pain no longer feels like punishment, but like preparation. You begin to see that everything you went through, the manipulation, the confusion, the loneliness, was shaping you into someone wiser, calmer, and more awake than ever before. The person you were before the pain could love deeply, but now you can love deeply with discernment. The person you were before could forgive easily, but now you forgive without forgetting who you are. Growth doesn't mean you erase the past, it means you use it as fuel to build something unshakable within yourself. The narcissist once made you believe that your worth was negotiable. They trained you to seek their approval like oxygen, to doubt yourself every time you spoke truth, to believe that peace was something you had to earn. But you now see through the illusion. You see that their control was never about your flaws, it was about your potential. They feared your clarity because they knew the moment you saw your own light, theirs would fade. And that's exactly what's happening now. Every time you choose peace over reaction, every time you choose silence over chaos, every time you choose yourself over the cycle, they lose the grip they once had on your mind. Healing from this kind of love isn't about erasing what happened. It's about transforming the energy of what was meant to break you into the strength that rebuilds you. Pain is energy. And when you channel it into purpose, into self-respect, into growth, it becomes your teacher instead of your captor. You start to understand that closure doesn't come from them admitting their wrongs. It comes from you refusing to carry their weight anymore. You stop waiting for them to make things right because you're too busy making yourself whole. There's a quiet kind of power that emerges when you no longer chase understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you. That power doesn't shout. It doesn't seek revenge. It simply rises. It smiles at the same silence that once terrified you, because that silence is now your sanctuary. It's the sound of your boundaries being honored. It's the sound of your energy returning home. And in that stillness, you begin to recognize yourself again, not as the broken version they left behind, but as the healed one they never expected you to become. Your empathy, your softness, your capacity to love, none of it was wasted. Those qualities were never weaknesses. They are the very proof that even after being surrounded by manipulation, your soul remained pure. They tried to turn your kindness into a weapon, but instead, it became your greatest armor, because now your empathy has wisdom, your love has boundaries, your compassion has direction, and that combination makes you untouchable. You no longer need to prove your strength by surviving storms. You now show it by creating peace where there is none. That is the real transformation. Not becoming harder, but becoming freer. You've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting the pain. It means you've stopped identifying with it. You can look back without collapsing. You can remember without reopening the wound. You can speak truth without shaking. That's liberation. That's the quiet revolution that begins when you stop fighting for love that hurts and start choosing love that heals. And as you walk forward now, you carry something far more powerful than revenge or regret. You carry awareness, the kind of awareness that no one can manipulate again, the kind of awareness that turns pain into purpose. You've outgrown the cage they built for you, and now you're flying higher than they ever imagined you could. As your awareness deepens, something within you begins to settle, not in weakness but in strength, the kind of strength that doesn't need to prove anything anymore. You no longer crave to be understood by those who refuse to listen. You no longer beg to be seen by eyes that only sought reflection. You've stopped performing, stopped pleading, stopped trying to convince anyone of your worth. Because the truth is, the moment you began to heal, you stopped being available for your own destruction. That's when the shift became permanent. Healing after a narcissist isn't a straight path, it's a spiral. There are days you feel unstoppable and days you question if you've truly moved on. But both are part of the process. You are rewiring a mind that was conditioned to survive chaos. You are teaching your heart that peace isn't dangerous. So when the memories resurface, don't see them as setbacks. See them as echoes of the person you no longer are. Every time the pain returns, it's just your body asking for more love, more truth, more presence. And you now have the power to give it. The greatest revenge is not found in their regret. It's found in your rise. Narcissists cannot comprehend peace. They cannot fathom a heart that heals. They thrive on reaction, on drama, on energy. But when you become still, when you choose not to respond, when you build a life so grounded in self-respect that their name no longer stirs emotion, that's when you reclaim everything they took. Your silence becomes their defeat. Your growth becomes their mirror, reflecting everything they failed to become. And yet, this isn't about them anymore. This is about you choosing to live again without needing their validation. You were never too much. You were never too emotional. You were never the problem. You were simply someone who loved deeply in a world that often confuses sensitivity with weakness. But sensitivity is strength. It's awareness sharpened by experience. It's the ability to feel fully and still move forward. What they called weakness was your capacity for connection. What they mocked was your courage to care. And now that same sensitivity allows you to build a life with authenticity, one that no longer bends to fit someone else's illusion. Every time you choose to speak your truth without fear, you break another chain. Every time you set a boundary and keep it, you rewrite the story of your worth. Every time you forgive yourself for staying too long, you reclaim a piece of your freedom. The healing is not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It happens quietly in moments of honesty, in choices that honor your peace, in breaths that no longer carry someone else's weight. And slowly you realize that the person you were trying to become to be loved was never who you needed to be. You were already enough before the pain began. Now, as you step into this new chapter, you do so with clarity. You know that love is not meant to confuse, it's meant to expand. You understand that kindness is powerful, but only when it includes yourself. You see that forgiveness is not permission for them to return, it's the release that allows you to move forward. And when you look in the mirror now, you no longer see someone broken by love. You see someone transformed by it. You see someone who turned pain into wisdom, manipulation into awareness, and loss into liberation. You see freedom, and this time, it's yours to keep. Freedom after manipulation is a quiet kind of miracle. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives slowly, in the moments you least expect. When you wake up and realize your first thought is no longer about them, when your heart no longer races at the sound of their name, when you can sit in silence and feel peace instead of panic, that's when you know the healing has taken root. Because true healing is not about forgetting, It's about remembering without pain. It's about carrying the lesson without carrying the weight. You begin to see that everything you went through was a sacred dismantling of illusion. What you thought was love was dependency. What you thought was loyalty was conditioning. What you thought was connection was control. And yet you stayed, not because you were weak, but because you had hope. Hope that love could heal what it didn't create. Hope that understanding could fix what wasn't yours to fix. That hope was your strength then, but now your strength is truth. The truth that real love does not require you to lose yourself. It doesn't silence your voice or punish your feelings. It doesn't thrive on power. It thrives on presence. The person you were in that relationship didn't fail. They fought. Every day, they tried to protect love. They tried to hold things together that were already falling apart. You gave everything you could, not because you didn't know your worth, but because you believed in potential. And that belief is something to be proud of. It means you are someone who sees the best in people, even when it's buried under their pain. But now you understand the balance. You can see the good in others without ignoring the harm they cause. You can have compassion without self-sacrifice. You can love without losing yourself. There comes a time when the strength you once used to survive becomes the strength you use to rebuild. You stop looking back with regret and start looking forward with purpose. The pain that once haunted you now becomes your teacher. The fear that once controlled you now becomes your signal for growth. You learn to trust yourself again, not because someone tells you to, but because you've seen what happens when you don't. You learn to stand alone, not in isolation, but in power. You are no longer afraid of solitude because you've discovered that solitude is where the soul speaks loudest. Your transformation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world taught you to doubt yourself. The one who laughed freely, the one who loved without fear, the one who believed that peace was possible. That version of you never truly disappeared. It was buried under survival, waiting for this moment to rise again. And now, it's rising, not in desperation, but in calm certainty. Because you finally understand that peace isn't given, it's chosen. You no longer chase what drains you. You no longer explain your worth to those who refuse to see it. You no longer seek closure from chaos. You've learned that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And as you stand here now, stronger, clearer, freer, you realize that the journey wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you were always right about one thing: you were meant for more. More peace, more truth, more love. And the moment you choose yourself completely, that more finally begins.